Hello, this is some guy in Hawaii with a quick but relatively detailed primer on independent peoples. Independent peoples are these gray, non-civ actors that spawn units both in fog-obscured areas of the map, including areas of territories we control, and from specific points in revealed areas. Hostile peoples generally spawn from redoubts. Peaceful people generally spawn from encampments. They can establish outposts and can found and spawn from individual cities. They have specific identities and a life cycle that lasts no more than 50 turns. If an independent people suddenly disappear, city and all, they probably reach that limit. They sometimes spawn on neighboring land masses and travel across water to suddenly appear en masse in areas of our territory where we weren't paying attention. Peaceful ones run around our territory without being a threat. Hostile ones aggressively attack our units, to include rebels from civs whose cities became mutinous and can be a real problem. Both, however, can also be a real opportunity, opportunities that we need to understand because even if we don't take advantage of them, our opponents will. So, three big ways to exploit independent peoples: easy militarist stars, mercenaries, and assimilation. Okay, let's talk about militarist stars. Defeating independent people units counts towards earning militarist stars, the same as defeating rival civ units, but without generating grievances or the need to go to war. Catching independent people units at sea, especially in the early game, often means even easier victories because independent peoples don't field regular naval units. Okay, and of course, any successful combat generates unit XP. The only drawback to battling independent peoples is that it can make hiring mercenaries and assimilation, the other two exploits, much harder to do. This is because we have a relationship with any established peoples who founded an actual city. Clicking on the city icon brings up this screen. A bar in our Civ color down here shows our current relationship with these people. Now, our relationship can range from bad to good, 0 to 100%, left to right. We can increase our relationship, move the bar to the right or move it faster by patronizing these people. That's by spending gold or influence. Other civs can and will do the same. We will often see other colored bars down here. Okay. As long as there's a time error here with a number, our relationship is improving. The number indicates how much it improves each turn. When our relationship reaches certain levels, we can hire their units as mercenaries and even assimilate them, the city and its units, into our civilization. More on mercenaries and assimilation in a moment. The thing to understand here is that attacking an independent people's units resets this relationship bar to 0. So, earn military stars and XP or hire mercenaries and or assimilate, but not both. So we've covered military stars. Let's take a look at our relationship as it relates to hiring mercenaries and or assimilating peoples. Hiring mercenaries requires our relationship to be greater than 10% for hostile peoples and greater than 60% for peaceful peoples. Assimilation requires our relationship to be at least 91% for either type and also higher than any other civ patronizing that particular people. Now, the actual patronage cost, which goes up with successive applications, by the way, depends on our ideological proximity to the people in question. That's these sliders here, which basically mirror our civic, the sliders on our civic display. Okay, the closer our ideology, determined by our civic choices, is to these extremes, and a people's ideology is always at one end or the other, the cheaper the patronage cost, the cheaper the hiring or assimilation cost, and the faster this bar moves to the right. Aesthete cultures always have their ideological proximity with any independent people maxed out, regardless of their civic choices. And their patronage costs are always the cheapest, and the rate at which the bar moves is always the fastest. So, how do we hire mercenaries? Well, establish a relationship, get to the right level, click on an army. Not all armies can be hired, some are reserved for city defense. Look for ones whose hire button is not grayed out. Click on that button to pay the hiring cost, get the army. It's that simple. Okay. Mercenaries operate like any other of our units to include incurring upkeep costs, but may not be combined with our regular civ units. So make sure we have organized warfare to reinforce them or use them as reinforcements. Mercenary armies can't be split up into individual units. They also cannot establish outposts and can't be upgraded. They will normally remain under the hiring civ's control for 20 turns before reverting back to their original people. Hired mercenary units will switch their colors and symbology to our civ. Units hired by other civs will retain their gray-colored symbology, but when clicked on, show their identity as mercenaries for a specific civ or a specific civ city. This is true of rebels as well. The advantages of mercenaries should be obvious. Hiring mercenaries is a quick and easy way to increase our combat power, both when declaring war or finding ourselves the target of a declaration of war. Assuming we've planned ahead patronage-wise, we hire them instantly, use them up if need be, and then after 20 turns, we are done with them. They still cost money and or influence to patronize and maintain, but they don't take production time away from building districts, infrastructure, or wonders, and they don't cost population. Also, if a mercenary unit or army finishes up its 20-turn run and reverts back to an independent people identity, but we still want them, just hire them again. Now, I don't think I can oversell the usefulness of mercenaries. They have gotten my ass out of the fire numerous times, especially when I was playing a merchant culture who, despite doing everything to play nice, end up facing off against an intractable culture. If you find yourself repeatedly being overwhelmed by militarist and expansionist cultures or just asshole leaders, especially in the early game, learn to use mercenaries. Again, if we've planned ahead, it's a very useful way to grab extra units when we find ourselves suddenly at war, and a great way to increase our forces when intentionally declaring war. Even if you're not going to war, basically, if you're having to skirmish an awful lot, mercenaries are awesome. Now, assimilating an entire people by comparison gains us a territory and all its resources, a city and all its constructs, and additional units. Okay, now there are potential advantages and disadvantages to doing this. On the plus side, the assimilation cost in influence is usually cheaper than evolving an outpost, especially if we already have 3 or more cities. The addition of units can seriously bolster our defensive and or offensive capability. Just having another city to generate wealth, influence, faith, and units can be a big plus. The regional resources that come with that city can be a nice plus as well. And if the region is well placed with respect to the rest of our territories, it can make defense and or expansion that much easier. On the minus side, extra units means extra gold upkeep. And if the assimilated city gold production is not up to supporting those units fully, our wealth production takes a hit. Okay. Stability can sometimes be an issue. Sometimes the placement of the region is not ideal. A city far from the rest of our civilization may fall more easily under the influence or religious sway of a closer civ. It may also occupy a geographic spot that's hard to support from our other regions. Okay, an additional city may force us above our city cap, which affects influence generation. Lastly, if we assimilate a people patronized by one or more other civs, and the other civs have a high level of patronage with those people, this will generate a stole my independent people grievance with those civs. Okay, now, these are all things to keep in mind when considering assimilation. One other thing of note, if assimilation is a possible goal, unless we have influence to burn, we do not patronize with influence. It will increase the cost of the actual assimilation. Use only gold. Now, I'm not sure if the reverse is true with hiring mercenaries since I've yet to test this, and hiring them tends to be relatively cheap. In any case, that covers the big 3 opportunities. 2 other things to keep in mind with regard to independent people in general. First, we can gift our outposts to wandering independent people armies. That's what this button does when we click on some armies or units. And I've yet to try this out. I suspect that doing it this way, gifting an outpost, waiting for it to become a city, patronizing and assimilate it, may cost less influence in the long run than just converting the outpost to a city. Again, though, that depends on how many cities we already have and on our influence generation rate. And this method can take a while, and a rival civ could steal it or attack it before or after it becomes a city. Things to keep in mind. Second, even if assimilation or hiring mercenaries is not our objective, patronizing hostile people still has another advantage. From 0 to 60 relationship, violent peoples will still attack us, even if we've hired some of their units as mercenaries. Once our relationship exceeds 60, however, they are essentially friendly and will not attack us. So that's a quick primer on independent peoples. The more we play the game, especially on larger maps, the more independent peoples factor in, and the more understanding and exploiting these mechanics becomes important. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving me a like, a comment, or subscribing. You can also check me out on twitch.tv/SomeOneGuy in Hawaii. I stream at least 3 times a week, Humankind and other games. And as always, stay safe, and thanks for watching.